Hey, hello there! Today I'm going to show you how to make this magic fortune-telling ball, crystal ball, whatever. So without further ado, let's hop straight into it. First, let us delete the camera and the lamp, as we won't need it. But we will need the default cube, believe it or not. So let us press Ctrl 3, and that will give us a subdivision surface modifier with 3 iterations. We're going to apply that, and then add in a cast modifier. Set the factor to 1, and now it will become a perfect sphere. If you toggle it on and off, you will see the effect. Now apply that as well. Now let's press Ctrl and 7 on the numpad, and we will go to bottom orthographic view. Now select the bottom for faces and press Ctrl plus until you get past this sharp edge. Like that, so we have a nice curvature. We will use that as our stand. Now press Shift D to duplicate it, right click to snap it back to the original location, press P, and then Selection. Now we have separated it without actually separating it. So we have a separate object, but the ball is still intact. Now go into Edit mode, into Edge Selection mode, Alt click, and press E, S, and scale it out a bit. Maybe that is a little bit too much. Now press E again, Z for the Z axis, bring it down. And now we cannot simply press F because it's still a bit wavy. So let's scale it. So press S and then Z and then 0. Now it should be flat. Now press F and you should see a flat bottom. Press I twice to insert it twice. That will help us when we subdivide it because we have a big angle and that usually doesn't render well. Now press Ctrl 2 on the numpad and you should be getting this. Now you could leave it like this, but I don't really like the look of it. So I'm going to sharpen it up by adding in some edge loops by pressing Ctrl R. Bring them up like so, add in another one, scale it again by 0 on the Z axis, and press G, Z and bring it down. Now you can press W and shade it smooth, and you can also crease this up a bit and crease it up on the other side as well. Now we have this intact. We will not be UV unwrapping this, because we won't need to, and I'm going to show you a trick later, which you can abuse to have good UV maps or good texture spacing on basically any object, but you're gonna see for yourself. Now we want to subdivide this 2 times as well. So press Ctrl 2, W, Shade Smooth. Now would be a good time to save this, so press Ctrl S, and I'm going to save this. You get the joke? Okay, now select the bottom of it, Shift S, cursor to selected. Get out of edit mode and press Shift A. Add in a plane. Now that we have the plane, we can see it perfectly intersects with it, so it's bang on the bottom. So scale it out until you like it. Now extrude it down. We won't be needing this bottom part, so you can just delete the face. Now, go into top orthographic view and subdivide it a few times by pressing Ctrl R and adding some loops. Now you want to make it really thin, but not too thin, so let me just look at it. 25 edges should be fine. Add in the same amount on the other side as we want squares. Now to the front. We want to add in a few. 1 is fine. Now we have rough squares. We won't be needing that much detail on the sides anyway, because we're going to view it from kind of the top, so that is fine. Now add in the multi-resolution modifier. We're going to subdivide it twice. Press W and Shade Smooth. Shift S or Ctrl S to save. Now go into the sculpting tab. What we want to do now is select the cloth brush. Make sure that the deformation is set to drag and you have the strength set to something reasonable. I do not suggest setting it to something close to 1. So what we want to do now is drag away from our mesh. That is because it is weighing down the tablecloth and things or deformation should appear further away from it, going away from it. You could also make it go towards it, but not too much, as I think that takes away from the realism. Now do that a bit until it looks good. Basically I'm just going to do a rough job with this because I do not want to spend too much time on it, because this is a tutorial and I want it to be quick. You can take all the time in the world to basically not do this, but do it properly. Okay, once you have your tablecloth as messy or as clean as you want, you can just look at it, see if you have any sort of discrepancies like this here, those weird triangles. Those are basically just shading issues which happen when you use this brush too much, or if you use any brush too much, and you can just simply smooth it out with a lower value like 0.3, and it will gradually go away. You don't need to take care of all of it, but just gently smooth it so it will look a little nicer later. Something like that is fine. Now if you have some jagged edges still, even though you have really a lot of topology in there, and you find yourself having a weird line here, just smooth it out and it will be fine. Now for the jagged edges, if we go back to the layout tab, they're still there, but barely visible. What you can do is just simply add in a subdivision surface modifier again, and you see not only does it go away, but it also becomes one hell of a lot crisper, which I always like. Now 1 iteration should be plenty. As you can see, 2 really does nothing but make the viewport laggy a bit, so 1 iteration for viewport and render is fine. Now since we are using the multi-resolution modifier, we can easily give this a UV map. So just simply Alt-Shift-click on all the edges and press Ctrl E, mark seam, and now we can select everything, you unwrap. You have unwrapped this model. Now go up here and go into face orientation. As you can see, only the ball is blue, but we want everything to be blue, as then the faces will be showing in the right direction. As right now, the faces are inverted. So what you can do is select both parts, go into edit mode, select everything, and then press Shift N. Now everything should be blue on the top side, and on the bottom side it should be red, but we do not care about the bottom, only the top. So, next up, we are going into shading. Once we turn this off. Now let's go into the shading view, and first we're going to take care of this one here. We're going to remove the material and give it a separate material, because those two were sharing the same material and we do not want that. So first let us take care of this here. I'm basically going to apply a texture I found on polygon.com, but there is plenty of sites where you can find free textures to download. Some of them are textures.com, Texture Haven, which I think now is called Polyhaven. I don't know, CG Textures is a thing, I think. So just take a look at that and you should be good to go. So once I find my textures, I'm going to show you how to texture this little guy. Okay, I found them. So we have the color. First I'm going to show you my folder. So we are going to be needing the color, the displacement, the roughness or the gloss map. Make sure about what it says. This one says gloss, so it's the inverted version of roughness. And normal map, that's all we're going to need. So drag the color information, or the albedo, or the diffuse, whatever it is called, plug it in here. As you can see, we immediately have some stretching. The way we can fix that is by changing this to box and adding a mapping and a texture coordinate node. Now we need to set this to object. As you can see, we now have something that looks good, but we have a seam here, which we do not want. Now we have a seam over here as well. How can we get rid of that? Well, we have this set to box, and now if we set the blend to something like 0.1, this gets away. You can play with the blend value. 0.2 usually looks fine. And now let's add in a displacement map. We need to connect this up the same way, so connect this and set it to non-color data. Anything that doesn't go into the base color should be set to non-color. And now I drag the color into the normal and it looks bad. Get a bump node. Put the color into the height, and that's a little strong, I think. And it's also again stretched. That is because we have not set it to box and blend. As you can see now, it looks better. So let's set it to 0.1. At distance, we do not want to affect the strength, only the distance, and that should be good. Now the gloss. The gloss is, oops, not to be put in there. The gloss is going into the roughness. We need to set it to flat, to boxed, pardon me. Again, set the blend, and connect it in there. But now it's really rough, because as you remember, the texture is almost white, a light gray, and basically it says how glossy is this. But we have this roughness, so if it's brighter, it means it's rougher, but the texture wants to make it glossier. So what we need to do is invert this with an invert node. And now you can see it's a little bit shiny on the edges. And now what we need to do is add a normal map. Put the color into the normal, set it to non-color, set it to box, and 0.2. It looks bad again. Also we need to connect this. It still looks bad. That is because we are missing a normal map node. Now it's fine. I'm going to set this to 0.4. Because I want it to be really subtle, as you can see here. So, now for the tablecloth. I do not know where I got this texture, but I'm going to fast forward as it's really nothing too fancy, just some texture applying, and you should already know how to do that. So now that I have connected that up, you can see it's, well, the color doesn't really match the image I've showed you before, and also it looks a little bit ugly. So first, let's take care of the color. Add an hue saturation node, and I'm going to drag the hue simply to 0, and that makes it red, and that makes it look one hell of a lot better. So next up, what I'm going to do is, okay, pardon me on that. Next up, what I'm going to do is set this to a higher value, like 12, so I get more of the fine detail. Maybe not 12, maybe 10. 10 is a little too little, so let me set it to 11. 11 seems to be the magic value, and when you adjust one, you need to adjust all of them at once, so that is why I have connected all of them to the same node. And I want this to be a little bit darker and less saturated, maybe not that much, like so. Okay, now if we preview this, it's rather dark, isn't it? We need to set an HDRI up, so let me get into the environment texture, click on open, HDRI, and let's look for one that looks good. I like this one. Okay, now it would be the best time to add in a camera. So let's do that quickly, set it up. By pressing 0 on the numpad, you can quickly hop into it. I want to show it from the side really, so let's do it like that. And I also want to go a little bit back and set this to like 100 millimeters, maybe 105, and now I can get closer as I want. And yeah, that should be it. Now if we take a quick render, doesn't look too bad. So now let's go to the bow tab, and I want to rotate it to a rather dark spot, so maybe going around here would be better. So you want to play with the Z rotation until you get something that you like. That was maybe a bit too much. minus 110. Okay, minus 160. Okay, that doesn't look too bad, I think. If we just render this, by pressing Ctrl B, you can just make the border selection. We can go to Object. Now we want to set the roughness to 0.01, that makes it run 1%, and set the transmission to 1. Okay, now we want this to be completely white, and we're good to go. Next up, we want to save this a bunch of times, so we don't lose it, and add in a principled volume. Set the volume into the volume, or rather plug it into the volume, and now we want to add in the Voronoi texture, and plug the color into the immersion strength. As you can see, it looks really weird, like milky glass, but we're going to get rid of it soon by adding in the Musgrave and setting the height into the vector. And now you can see it's kind of swirling, it's not really angular anymore. And we already can set this to a higher value, and now it's going to be less noticeable what happened there. But if I go for color ramp here and lower the brightness on this one, always make sure to save your things so you don't lose them. Setting the brightness to 0.1, and once we crank up the blacks here, should be seeing some streakiness, but it's really faint and subtle. So add in the mouth node, set it to multiply, and now let's multiply this by a high value like 400. You can see the streakiness intensifies. You can make it as subtle as you want. I like this here. I just lost my second color. Here it is. Now we can color this. So set the color into the vector, and set it into the immersion color, and set this to basically any color you want. I'm going to choose this kind of bluish color, bluish greenish, maybe a little bit more towards this side, and let's bump it up a bit more. Let's bump it up a bit more. Okay, this is looking fine, maybe even more. We could go like crazy high, like 5000, and make the scene illuminate by this bowl. Which maybe we should even do. Okay, this is a really crazy high value, which I'm going to keep because I like it. I didn't choose this high of a value in my final render originally, but hey, we can experiment a bit. Okay, so now I want to add in a mix RGB and distort it with a simple... oh, this looks really nice. Distort it with a noise texture and plug the noise or the color into the color and the object into the object and this object into this object, and now it should look even streakier. And we are not really seeing it because we do not have enough samples. So let's bump this up to 64 and add an adaptive sampling, and for this one maybe it might crash, so go to viewport, open image to noise. When rendering on your graphics card, make sure to go into solid mode, then switch it, because you will not believe how many times it crashed on me. Okay, now this doesn't give us a nice preview of it. Okay, this is better. Essentially, you want to render this at really high values so that you can have more of the streakiness and less to worry about, because once the denoise stuff becomes bludgy at lower resolutions, and rendering this at like 4K will make this a lot better for you, which I am going to do, and I'm going to render this at 256 samples, and yeah, I will see you after. See ya, bye. Okay, so now this is the result. You could obviously make it brighter by adding in a light, like this. Also, I have added an empty and set it as the focus object for my camera, and set the f-stop to 1.0 because 1.2 because I forgot to do that before. Really nothing spectacular, just click on it, add in an empty, and you should be good to go. Hello, cursor to selected, add in a circle, fill it, bring it up. Now the funny stuff is that you will need to add in an immersion shader, and you see the trick is, if you were to render this right now, you would see that you will get a reflection out of it at some point. It's really subtle right now, so I'm going to just boost its strength. Here is the reflection. Well, let's set it to 20. Here's the reflection, and it's really sharp, and I do not like it. So how do I change that? You simply go to gradient, and what that will do is, once you preview it, you can see if you put the color into the strength, it kind of starts at a weird point, but if you add a texture coordinate and set it to object, it should start in the middle once you set it to spherical. Yeah. See? Object, and it works. Now let's add in a math node, because again, now it's in the middle, it would be set to 1, and we need it to be like around 20. Set it to multiply, 20, and now you should be getting a really smooth fall off, which is more realistic ultimately, and also looks better. At least in my opinion. Yep, just a simple tiny reflection, and you get a little bit more light. So that was all. You could add a vignette in Photoshop, GIMP, or even Instagram if you really wanted it to. And yeah, you could color grade it like I did, and that would be it. So I will see you the next time I post a tutorial, and yeah, you will be able to download this once March starts, but until then, you have another free download on my website under the roadmap tab until the end of February, so you have about 4 days, or 3, because the day is almost over. So you have about 3 days. Make it count, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.